Overnight, Israeli fighter jets struck military targets deep inside Syria, the IDF confirmed this morning. The targets include the Tadmor and T4 air bases in the province of Homs, just northeast of Damascus. The IDF stated its commitment to remove any threat posed to the citizens of the State of Israel. The IDF has stepped up airstrikes in Syria in recent months, targeting military sites said to be linked to Iranian forces and Lebanon's Hezbollah, both allies of the former Syrian government. Syrian media also reported this morning that the IDF had begun small-scale ground operations into Syria, beginning from the village of Kuwaya. After the fall of the Assad regime, Israeli Defense Minister Katz stated that Israel was committed to protecting not only border citizens, but the Druze population as well. The war in Gaza is continuing as the IDF expands military operations in Gaza. Let's take a look at the latest.
As the IDF continues strategic strikes and the ground operation inside Gaza following the collapse of the ceasefire agreement, IDF Brigade 14 of the Gaza Division encircled Tel Sultan, a recently organized Hamas command center in Rafah. 20 Hamas terrorists were killed in the battle and 30 were arrested for questioning. In eastern Gaza, troops also expanded into parts of Khan Yunis, and IDF forces carried out dozens of airstrikes on Hamas vehicles, including the white pickup trucks used on October 7th and in hostage release ceremonies. This comes as Hamas and Islamic Jihad continue sporadic rocket fire, with 2 rockets fired from northern Gaza towards southern Israel last night at 7 p.m. The rockets were intercepted and no injuries were reported. One additional rocket was fired at 9 p.m. towards southern Israel, but was also intercepted. Evacuation notices to civilians in Beit Lahia, Jabalia, and Beit Hanun were issued following the attacks. On Monday, the UN also announced they would be reducing their presence in Gaza following the death of a UN staffer and the injury of 5 others, which they blamed on Israel. The IDF has denied it was involved with the explosion that took place on March 19th in central Gaza. Meanwhile, central Israel and Jerusalem came under rocket fire from the Houthis last night, with 1 ballistic missile being intercepted by the IDF outside of Israeli airspace. No injuries were reported.
The first signs of life from 2 male hostages in captivity were released by Hamas terrorists in a propaganda video Monday night. ILTV Shosh Bedrosian is in Hostage Square with the latest. Shosh, what more can you tell us?
Emily, as you mentioned, it's the first public signs of life these families receive that their loved ones are alive in Hamas captivity. Of course, it's impossible to know when that video was filmed, but the hostages did mention recent dates of events that took place. Now, this was the first time since the ceasefire was broken, Hamas released a propaganda video of hostages in captivity. With the permission from both families, this is the propaganda video Hamas released of 35-year-old Elkana Bohbot and 24-year-old Yoseph Haim Ohana. In their first public signs of life from being kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th, both men appear thin, starved, with obvious signs of having no exposure to the sunlight. In the harrowing video, both men are sitting on the floor with a makeshift background, saying they are now being identified as numbers in Hamas captivity instead of their names. Ohana explains the men asked to make the video, although there is no way to confirm Hamas did not force them to say anything under difficult circumstances. The men say there is barely any food, difficult conditions, and even had a message for released hostage Ohana Ben Ami to share with the world the truth about the conditions they're being held in. The testimony revealed Ben Ami, who was released in the first phase of the deal, emaciated and pale, was held with the 2 hostages and others while in captivity. Ohana Ben Ami wrote on Facebook in response to the propaganda video that he left his dear friends in captivity and that he misses them and the 3 additional hostages he was held with as well, although he is not allowed to say their names publicly. Ben Ami said the amount of food given out to hostages is reduced once there is a return to fighting. The family of Bohbot says their son is in poor condition and has lost a significant amount of weight. They say he suffers from skin and breathing problems from the conditions he is being held in addition to the asthma he already has. The last time he was seen alive was on October 7th, when a video surfaced of him in captivity tied up on the floor after he was kidnapped into Gaza from Nova. His wife Rivka and 3-year-old son are waiting for him to return home. Ohana was trying to help injured people on October 7th when Hamas terrorists began their deadly rampage at the Nova Music Festival. There was no proof of life video of the 24-year-old since he was kidnapped into Gaza. According to reports, both of these families have received multiple signs of life of their loved ones while in Hamas captivity after hostages were recently released in the first phase of this deal. Now, these two hostages are of the 24 Israel believes are still alive in Gaza at this time. Emily?
All right, thank you, Shosh, for that update. Well, in case you needed further proof that the pro-Palestinian organizations at Columbia University or really just glorified Hamas supporters, a new lawsuit is unveiling horrifying details that support the claim that these very groups did not just aid Hamas from the United States, but also knew of the October 7th massacre before it unfolded. ILTV's Devil Klein has more.
9 U.S. and Israeli citizens victims of the October 7th massacre have filed for a lawsuit against Palestinian advocates at Columbia University. The organizers and supporters of pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University were sued on Monday in Manhattan federal court over their alleged functioning as Hamas's, quote, propaganda arm and, quote, in-house public relations firm in New York City and on campus. The findings of this case were presented against the leading U.S.-based anti-Israel groups and activists, including Columbia University Apartheid Divest head Mahmoud Khalil, and Within Our Lifetime organization and leader, American Muslim Nardeen Kisawani. According to case findings, Columbia's SJP reactivated their public relations presence just 3 minutes before Hamas terrorists infiltrated Israeli territory and carried out their massacre. In addition to reactivating their social accounts, SJP posted on their Instagram announcing a meeting and stating that supporters should, quote, stay tuned minutes before the attack. Beyond allegations against the SJP, the Bears for Palestine Solidarity released a statement on October 8th honoring Hamas terrorists, quote, working on the ground on several axes of the so-called Gaza envelope, alongside our comrades in blood and arms. The group offered support for the, quote, resistance in Gaza and the Hamas operation as a revolutionary moment in Palestinian resistance. Mountains of further evidence against notorious pro-Palestinian groups led lawmakers to believe that not only were these groups aware of the massacre to come, but served as an extension of Hamas on U.S. campuses. Their aim, to spread as much propaganda as possible leading up to October 7th and after it.
The U.S. State Department is making every effort to stop the pro-Hamas mob on American campuses, which has been plaguing universities since October 7th. In recent weeks, we've seen a wave of arrests across the country, starting with Mahmoud Khalil, one of the leaders of the Columbia University protests, and continuing with visa cancellations for foreign faculty and students who have used their positions to support U.S.-designated terror entities. But if the Trump administration is serious about rooting out the terror infrastructure on campuses, why is Islamic regime official Syed Hossein Mousavian still walking free and teaching at Princeton University? Mousavian is not simply a professor. He's a former ambassador of the Islamic regime in Iran to Germany. He served on Iran's National Security Council. He attended the funeral of IRGC commander Qasem Soleimani, and he was directly involved in Iran's nuclear deception. Worst of all, he was implicated in the regime's disappearance and assassination of at least 24 Iranian dissidents abroad in the early 1990s during his tenure in Germany as ambassador. Records show the murders were planned in the embassy, and at least one witness stated that Mousavian himself participated in the killings. This is a man linked to the assassination of dozens of Iranian dissidents on European soil, and he's teaching at one of the most prestigious universities in the United States. On Monday, the U.S. House Committee on Education and the Workforce officially launched an investigation into the Islamic regime's influence at Princeton University, with 12 members of the committee demanding an explanation regarding Mousavian. But U.S. intelligence already confirmed that the Islamic Republic has at least in part funded some of these campus protests against Israel. And Mousavian is not the first professor to infiltrate the American academic community. At Oberlin College, another former regime official linked to the murder of dissidents, Mohammed Jafar Mahalati, was placed on indefinite leave following multiple scandals. With every day, more is revealed about how the regime's infiltration penetrates academic, political, and social circles in the United States in a carefully orchestrated subversion campaign, from student organizations to tenured professors. And yet one of their most obvious agents is still living comfortably in New Jersey. To President Trump and Secretary Rubio, you took a stand on Columbia. You've begun to clean house, but the job is not finished. It's time to show the world that agents of terror, no matter how polished or academic, have no place on U.S. soil or in U.S. universities. Arrest Syed Hussein Mousavian. Well, as the Trump administration continues its crackdown on campus terror supporters, here to speak with us about the efforts and the case of Mousavian specifically is Ladan Bazargan, a former political prisoner of the Islamic Republic and a longtime activist against the radicalism that we're seeing on some American campuses today. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just to start, I'd love to get your take on what you think of the current administration's efforts to root out this terror support that we've seen on campus, especially since October 7th.
Thank you for inviting me. The problem I have with what the administration is doing is that they are going after students instead of after the professors. The students are young, or they don't know much about life. These are these professors that they give them the propaganda, they radicalize them, and they have far more reach than the actual students because they have connections between the governments, between the media, between other professors. So people like Mousavian, this is where the danger comes from. You mentioned also Columbia University, Hamid Dabashi is there, or in Princeton, we have Qamariya Tabrizi. These guys, they don't have the blood of Iranian Americans on their hands, but with the propaganda they're used against Israel, against the United States of America, and talk about colonialism and this and that, they create this hatred toward America that we see in the new generations of Americans, that they are fed with these ideas and they are rejecting the liberalism of the United States of America and the good things that we are standing for. And these are the things that the administration have to stand in front of it and get rid of people like Mousavian, Mahallati, and all the others.
Now, you're very familiar with Mousavian. Can you tell us a little bit about how it came to be that a person like him is at Princeton in the first place? I mean, how extensive is the Islamic Republic's infiltration on American campuses?
The problem we have is that a lot of leaders of the Islamic regime of Iran, right after the revolution, they were US educated or European educated. They were studying in the universities here even before the 1979 revolution, and they had created the Islamic centers in the Europe and America, and that's how they all connected with Khomeini, that later became the supreme leader of Iran, and they all went back to Iran. So they're very familiar with the US and European customs and traditions and the NGOs and the schools and everything. So they right away after the revolution started sending their own agents and propaganda to the US and Europe, and all these connections helped them create this web of professors in the Middle East studies of all the universities around, and each one helps the other one to get the job. So Mousavian came in right after the Green Movement. Actually, he left Iran not because his life was in danger, it's because they are all also thieves and they are stealing money and corrupt. So one of his friends, I guess, told the courts that he was trying to sell one of Iran's islands. So since he had court problems, he came to the US, and with the connections they already had created here, they gave him a job. And the excuse is that he has a PhD, he's a researcher, and he's helping us. And what's, more hurting and deceitful is that he is in a think tank supposedly that is about science and peace. A man who created this much chaos in the world, has the blood of American soldiers on his hands for supporting Hezbollah, for supporting the negotiations that they were kidnapping Americans in Lebanon and other stuff, and they use Hezbollah to kill Iranians on European soil. This man working at a center for peace and science is really shameful.
Now, what is your recommendation to both American and European officials when it comes to dealing with this infiltration on campuses? Can these governments really root out this extremism? I mean, we know that the Islamic Republic, at least in part, funded some of these, anti-Israel encampments on campuses. How can these governments better deal with this issue?
There must be transparency in the money they receive. They get all this money from, especially Qatar. They think Qatar is their friends, and they receive all this money, and they receive under the table the money from the Islamic regime of Iran, and they bring all these professors. What we recommend in IRIA, Alliance Against Islamic Regime of Iran Apologists, is that there must be a review on all the professors at the Middle East studies of all the universities. We just found out that also like Shirin Saidi is in Arkansas University. It's a public university University. This is the first one that we see some of them in the public university. He is US grown and studied in US, but in 2012 she went to Iran and worked in Tehran University for 2 years and wrote a book. And we see how she is supporting the Islamic regime of Iran. So it's important that all these professors be reviewed, especially if they are, unfortunately, they are Iran-born or they have somehow connected to the Iran, and they have to be reviewed. Also the ones from Qatar and other Arabic universities.
All right, well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today and for shedding some insight on this issue. Adan. Are you ready to hear from the minds behind Israel's tech revolution? Don't miss Breaking the Code, a live virtual event this Thursday. Join ILTV and Afeka College of Engineering for exclusive insights from industry giants like Uri Levine, founder of Waze, and Eugene Kandel of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Learn how Israel is shaping the future through education, innovation, and unstoppable engineering talent. This is your front row seat to what's next. Register now by scanning the QR code on your screen. The Houthis have launched another missile at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, marking a stark escalation in Iran's proxy war. Meanwhile, a U.S. intelligence breach has raised concerns over operational security. Here's more.
The Iranian-backed Houthi rebels continue their terror campaign against Israel, as early this morning the group claimed responsibility for a series of missile and drone attacks aimed at key Israeli targets.
استهدفت القوة الصاروخية مطار بن غوريون في منطقة يافا المحتلة، وذلك بصاروخين باليستيين، أحدهما ذو الفقار والآخر فلسطيني 2 لفرط صوتي، وقد حققت العملية هدفها بنجاح بفضل الله.
The attack, which followed a reported interception of a missile over Israel on Monday, March 24th, sent warning sirens blaring across Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Despite Israel's advanced defense systems neutralizing the threat, the incident underscores the escalating risk posed by Iran's proxy network. In response, the United States has taken aggressive steps, launching targeted strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. However, a serious intelligence breach has now cast a shadow over U.S. countermeasures.
On this text chain, conversations went at length about imminent military operations, including specific targets, weapons, and attack plans. These text messages very likely included classified U.S. intelligence.
This breach occurred when top Trump administration officials mistakenly used a private signal messaging group that included a journalist, inadvertently disclosing sensitive details of planned operations. The leak, detailing targets, weapons, and attack sequencing, has drawn bipartisan criticism as one of the most reckless lapses in national security in recent memory. While the intelligence slip has sparked outrage in Washington, it hasn't deterred the concerted effort to neutralize the Houthi threat. With Israel enduring multi-front assaults and Iran's proxies intensifying their aggression, the commitment to safeguarding national security remains unwavering.
After the unprecedented events of October 7th, soldiers were left without enough gear and vulnerable communities were left without security. The Israel Magen Fund continues to combat this by providing essential resources and support to affected communities, reinforcing national resilience during a time of crisis. To speak more about this, we have in studio David Rose, the founder and CEO of the Israel Magen Fund. David, thank you so much for joining us in studio here today. I want to start by asking you, what inspired you to create the Israel Magen Fund?
Okay, so after being many years in fundraising and helping different organizations, I decided to go independent and set up the Israel Magen Fund. What uniqueness about it is that when we see a problem in the field, we're able to supply the equipment. We don't give out money, we buy the equipment and supply the equipment to the field. So when a donor, I can make sure that the donor receives and gets what he wanted to get and what we wanted to supply to the field. So we started this 5 years ago. Started off in the beginning with different equipment that was missing, if it's medical equipment, if it's ambulances that we saw the missing defibrillators, if it's EMTs missing equipment. And then we got the donation. We actually literally bought the equipment and delivered it, showing that what we can do is ability is to move equipment fast from the supplier to the field, making sure that what they need is done. And that gave us experience, and we moved on further to work with bigger communities. We worked in Binyamin, an area of Yudav Shomron, where they came to us with a problem of fields being burned down with the Palestinians, similar to what's going on in Gaza before October 7th, when they were throwing over these balloons with rockets, balloons with fires, starting a fire. Same problem had in Binyamin. Came to me and said, "Can you help us out?" We took on a mission to get for them 4 ATVs at the fire trucks that put out fires, and thank God we managed to do it. Within a year, we supplied 4. It was a big project we got for them. And then they moved on to other places in Yehuda v'Shomron. And then when the war broke out...
Well, I wanted to ask you, what are the current projects that you're working on with IDF?
So, except for supporting soldiers that we do today, literally, just today, I was giving out helmets. Surprising, 16 months into this war, I get WhatsApp phone calls from different units that are being set up, new units or soldiers being called up first time, telling me, listen, I'm missing a helmet, I'm missing a protected vest, and I have donors that can help me out. I go and buy and supply it, and it's a big mission still going on today. Except for that, we took on a mission up north that we helped out communities over there that were hit by Hezbollah rockets, kibbutzim that were burnt, all the orchards were burned down over there, if it's kiwi, avocado, grape, vineyards, etc. We had the same vehicles we gave Shomron, we gave up north to Kibbutz Malkiah, Kibbutz Yiron, literally sitting on the border front. We helped them throughout the war, and we helped upgrade the security systems over there by supplying to 11 kibbutzim equipment, it was cameras, monitors, you name it, stuff that they would need it, that they had nothing. This is I got to them from nowhere. People just said to me, by the way, there's a problem, and I never say no to people. And I said, okay, let's go see what's going on over there. I went up there, they showed me the issues. I got a donor to help me out. I mean, he literally took 11 kibbutzim, but had no tech in the dispatch centers over there. Today, they have everything they need that they can see what goes on. If there's something coming into the kibbutz, they can help out. Except for that, we took on a very ambitious program to try and help out 1,000 soldiers going in now to the army. In March 2025, there's a big drafting to the army, different field units. So we decided to go take on 1,000 soldiers. We can give each one a kit. The kit is essential, basic stuff that they can use. If it's a multi-tool, if it's a dry fit t-shirt, if it's a toiletry bag, these things can help them start off the service in a nice way. When they go and get the training, Tironut in Israel, they have that equipment. But behind it is a message. The message we were giving them is, we're thinking of you, we were supporting you, we appreciate what they're going to do. They're going to have 3 years of their life, these 18-year-old boys. Let's give them something from Israel Magen Fund, to say to them, thank you for the service.
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, we are almost out of time, but I want to ask you really quickly, how can individuals and even organizations support this important work you're doing both for our IDF soldiers and also for communities?
So if you go to israelmagenfund.org, you have all the information over there about us, about the programs that we're doing up north in Yehuda v'Shomron, and the soldiers. We all need help. It's scary times we're living in, but yet there's hope, and we see the hope, and we see what we're giving to people, and we're helping them out. Let's continue going, and just put aside all the differences we have between people, and they give hope to Israel.
Absolutely. So absolutely. All right, David Rose, thank you so much for joining us today, Israel Magen Fund.
All the best.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of around 14 degrees Celsius or 58 degrees Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow we'll see more clear skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of about 27 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.